When I hear the word vocoder, I usually think of robotic sounding vocals. Ableton's vocoder is a new take on the traditional vocoder and is capable of lots of other cool effects besides the singing robot. In this series, we're going to check out some of the other effects we can make with Live's vocoder. In the first video, we're going to use it to thicken up a snare with a noise component and give it a dubstep style vibe. Think of the gated reverb technique with a twist. I have a track here with a few kick drums that I got from the Live 7 Legacy Live Pack. You could download this Live Pack from Ableton.com. Now I'm going into my device browser and dragging in an empty drum rack. I'm going to go into my file browser and I'm dragging in this eSnare3.AF, which I also got from that same Live Pack. I'm going to make a copy of this snare by Alt or Option dragging. The reason I'm doing this is because I want one dry snare and then I want a copy of that snare with effects on it. I'm going to mute the copy for now. So I'm going to go up and fire off this drum track. And again, it's just very simple. Just a kick on the one. So I just double click to make a new MIDI clip in the snare track. I'm going to go in and draw some snares, and I'm just putting the snare on the 3. And so notice I have a hit for the original snare and a hit for the copy. So let me fire that off. So we just have a basic dubstep pattern right now. And I'm going to go into Live's device browser, and I'm going to drag a vocoder into the snare track. And you'll notice right now that the vocoder is already set to noise, and that's great, that's what we want. So I'm going over to my envelope section. I'm just going to turn up the depth a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to turn it up to about 140 or so. And this is just going to make our attack and our release controls a bit more sensitive. So let me hit playback and then we'll adjust the envelope settings. Alright, now you can hear the snare also has this extra noise component. And I want to lengthen that noise component a little bit to let it ring out a bit. So I could do that with this release control. Alright, so now we have a nice long noise component to the snare sound. So let's jump over to the carrier settings. And I'm just going to turn on enhance. And that's going to thicken and brighten up the sound a little bit. And I think it helps out. Here we have our XY pad and we could change the character of the noise. So notice if we move this to the left, we sort of have a reduced 8-bit kind of Atari style noise component right now. And back over to the right, it's full resolution. As we move it down, notice the noise component becomes a bit more brittle. Alright, and here we have a brittle and reduced sound. So I kind of like it right about here. I think this setting will work well. So let's jump on over to right here, which is the filter bank settings. And the first thing to check out is bands. We could change the number of bands we have with this drop down right here. And notice that the number of bands significantly changes the color of the sound. To my ears, more bands gives us a more gentle sound. Also, we can attenuate or reduce the volume of certain bands by hovering over that band and drawing in with the pen tool. So at this point, you might want to pause the video and explore the different colors we can achieve with different filter band settings. We can also get rid of some of the high frequencies with the range control. So notice right now that I switched the highs to 8.31 kilohertz. And that what this does is it limits the range that these bands take up. So the highest band now is going to end on 8.31 kilohertz. And we could get rid of some of the lows with the lower boundary. Okay, so now that we have our basic noise sound down, I want to add a few effects to further enhance and shape the sound. So I'm actually going to go back into the drum rack and I'm going to unmute the dry snare. So now we're going to hear the snare with the noise and the dry snare at the same time. And then I'm going into my device browser and I'm going to add an auto filter after the vocoder. And what the auto filter is going to do, it's going to help us out in two ways. First, it's going to get rid of the higher frequencies of the noise, those harsh frequencies. And we could also use it to add in a gentle filter sweep. An envelope value above 0 allows us to use the attack and release controls to shape the sweep. The higher the envelope value, the more sensitive the attack and the release settings will be. And again, just play with the envelope settings to come up with something you like. And I think that works for me. And now I'm going to go back into the browser and add a reverb. And the reverb is going to help smooth the noise out a bit. I'm just going to do a couple changes to the reverb. I think it's pretty much fine the way it is. But I'm just going to get rid of the high cut so all of the frequencies are processed by the reverb. And I'm just changing the decay time a little bit. Just bumping it up to about 1.75 seconds. So the reverb takes a bit longer to fade out. And I'm just adding a little bit to the dry wet setting to make the reverb a bit more prominent in the sound. Now the last effect I'm going to put on here is probably the most important, which is the gate. And as you can hear, the gate is now cutting off the tail end of that noise. So it's no longer having the tail play out, it's now just cutting off the end of it and making it shorter. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn this control right here down to negative infinity. So when the gate is closed, when the level goes below the threshold right here, we won't hear any sound. Now I'm just going to adjust the threshold setting. And you can hear that the higher I go, the shorter that snare sound is. And I think that works fine. And now I'm just going to increase the release a bit. And that lets the tail ring out a little more. And that's a bit much, so I'm going to cut back a little bit. And I think that lets it fade out, not too gently, but not too quick. And final thing I'm going to do is just go back and just increase the threshold a little bit. And again, go back and set these two controls, the threshold and the release, to taste. So if you want a longer tail, pull the threshold down and increase the release. I'm pretty sure we have the noise section of our snare down. So what I want to do is go back now and I want to kind of adjust the overall sound of the snare. So I'm just going to hit play. And I want to lower the noise part a little bit. And I'm basically just mixing the two. So the dry snare is a bit louder than the snare with the noise. And now I want to go back and I want to add some effects to the overall sound. So I'm going to add a reverb. And notice that I put the reverb after and outside of the drum rack. So it's going to affect all of the sounds in the drum rack, meaning both snares. And I'm just taking the decay time down a bit so the tail isn't too long. And the dry wet down a bit as well, so it's not as reverb sounding. And after that, I'm just going to toss in a saturator to kind of glue both sounds together. And I'm just going to throw it on medium curve. And I think that adds a nice overall punch to the sound. And that about wraps it up. So thanks for checking this out. Be sure to check out dubspot.com for more production tutorials and tips. Thanks a lot. Take care.